So this dude's whole life was about one thing: getting to the absolute top of the martial arts world. But the more time he spent training, the more he realized it was a total long shot. It was like no matter what he did, reaching the peak of his craft just wasn't in the cards for him. Still, he was so desperate that he refused to just give up. So he started chasing this crazy old myth. A story about some god-tier dragon guarding a golden fruit that could supposedly make you live forever. After a totally brutal and deadly fight with that dragon guardian, he finally made it to the sacred spot where the legendary fruit was supposed to be. He could not believe his eyes. The golden fruit from the stories was for real. Its insane golden glow lit up everything around it, giving off this mysterious, almost divine vibe. He was completely wiped from the fight, so he just crashed on top of the dead dragon, his eyes glued to the glowing fruit. After he caught his breath, he slowly got up and walked over to the tree, feeling super confident. He was thinking this fruit was his ticket to finally reaching the martial arts peak he'd been dreaming about forever. Without even hesitating, he snatched the golden fruit and started chowing down. The second he swallowed, this wild, powerful energy just surged through his body. His veins were pulsing, his blood felt like it was boiling, and his entire body was shaking like it was being completely rebuilt by some crazy power. And yeah, this guy's name was Gilus Elragon, the dude known as the strongest human on the entire planet. But fast forward a few decades, and Gilus was old. He was lying in bed, super weak, surrounded by his kids and grandkids. They were all whispering that his time was almost up, and they had to accept that he was about to pass. His oldest son, Gilliam, was holding his hand like his life depended on it. Gilus, the head of the Elragon family, told his son he didn't want to see them all looking so bummed out. He said his time had just come, that's all. Gilliam tried to smile, but his voice was all shaky as he said the manor was already so gloomy after their mom died, and it would be even more lonely when their dad was gone too. But Gilus gently told him not to let the sadness take over, not to get lost in his grief. Then, as the room went quiet, Gilus's mind drifted back to that golden fruit. He had to admit to himself that maybe in the end you couldn't really believe in all those ancient myths. But still, he felt pretty lucky that he'd lived long enough to have a family of his own. He told his family he'd lived a long, awesome life and had zero regrets. But deep down, he knew that was a total lie. Even now, he just couldn't let go of his dream. If only he had more time. He'd still be chasing that martial arts peak, the dream that had been just out of reach his whole life. And so, in his last moments, he clung to that one desire until he took his final breath. But then, in a totally insane plot twist, Gilus opened his eyes again. He was super confused, wondering if he'd just fallen asleep or something. Everything felt off. His room was totally different. His body felt crazy light, and nothing looked familiar. When he finally looked down at his hands, his eyes went wide. These aren't my hands. Wait, am I a baby? He realized real quick that this situation was beyond weird. But as a 10-star level martial artist, he was like, how could anyone have pulled this on me without me noticing? Then it hit him. The divine dragon and the golden fruit. It all finally made sense. Fruit didn't give you immortality, it gave you a do-over reincarnation. It was a huge shock, but he was actually so hyped. He'd been given a second shot, a whole new life, to finally reach the peak he'd missed before. Soon he noticed he wasn't alone. Looking around, he realized he was in an annex of the Elragon Manor. He'd somehow been reborn into his own family. He then saw that the room was full of other babies. Just as he was wondering why there were so many infants, a group of maids came in holding baby bottles. But something was seriously weird. Instead of milk, they were carrying some kind of red liquid. Gilus watched the maids pour the crimson stuff into the bottles. He figured they were about to feed the babies, but then one of the maids suddenly brought out a goblin. They forced the bottle right into the goblin's mouth. A few seconds later, the goblin started shaking violently. A red light burst out of its body, and then it literally exploded in a shower of blood, splattering all over the room. Gilus was frozen solid. He was totally freaked out and confused. What in the world is even happening right now? One of the maids just calmly said the mixture would be okay, as long as they mixed in the right amount of water. As they started feeding the red stuff to the other babies, another maid picked up Gilus. He looked at the bottle and knew right away that was not milk. The energy rolling off it was terrifyingly strong. He could sense that the liquid was dragon blood, and he knew it was way too dangerous for a newborn's tiny body. But before he could even process it, the maid shoved the bottle in his mouth. On pure instinct, like any baby would, he started to drink. Instantly, this massive power surged through his veins. His tiny body was shaking from the pain. But Gilus knew this feeling. The blood of ancient dragons was flowing through him. He thought, this is super dangerous, but maybe this is also a huge opportunity. At first, he thought about stopping. But then he realized if he could actually absorb this power, he could become even stronger than he was before. He could finally reach the true summit of martial arts. With a new sense of determination, he kept drinking the dragon's blood. His veins were bulging and his body was convulsing in agony, but his will was unbreakable. Don't you dare underestimate me, he thought. I am Gilus Elragon. He just kept repeating the words in his head like over and over. The pain was insane, but somehow he pushed through. The maid was totally bug-eyed, watching him down, the rest of it surviving what should have been a total game over. Inside his tiny baby body, two epic dragon energies were going at it, a full-on war for control. And when one finally won, Gilus was floored by how easy it was to just soak up all that power. The second those two dragon powers fused inside him, he knew this was his shot. After chugging the last drop, he was just like, whoa, I actually made it through that nightmare pain. So he didn't blow up. Major plus. His body just leveled up. He clocked a few other babies who made it too, and couldn't help but crack a little smirk on the inside. He was thinking, yeah, never doubt a baby's will to live. But I mean, it was still a baby's body, so total exhaustion hit him like a truck. His eyes got super heavy, and even though he'd just won Big Gilfossil Dragon, the baddest human to ever be reborn, conked out. Fast forward 7 years, and he's deep in some seriously hardcore training. Dude's busting out one-handed push-ups with a giant freaking boulder balanced on his feet. When he hit his 1000th rep, he just kicked the boulder straight up. It came slamming down on his back, and Gilfus was just stunned by how jacked his body had gotten. Gilus Elragon, who used to be the big boss of the Elragon clan, was now going by Elragon. Zeke was thinking about how he got so ripped at such a young age, and it was all down to that ancient dragon blood pumping through his veins. The story goes that everyone in this world has this thing called a source of power, but that ancient dragon blood they fed them as babies was basically a supercharged version of it. Any kid who didn't die from drinking it ended up with a body way stronger than a normal person's. With that divine dragon juice flowing in him, Zeke knew he was already way past where he was at this age in his old life. And since he was the only baby who actually managed to chug a whole bottle of the stuff, his body went through this insane transformation that even he didn't see coming. But even with all his progress, the thing that was seriously ticking him off was that he was still just a 1-star. He'd been training like a maniac and figured he'd be at least a 4-star by now. Stars were how you measured your source power. The deal was, your body was basically its own little universe. The more stars you had floating around in there, the more powerful you were. But the more stars you got, the harder it was to level up. In his past life as Gilus Elragon, Zeke had hit the legendary 10 stars totally unheard of. He was literally the only person in the world to ever get that far. Time seriously flies, Zeke mumbled. He was 7 now. Turns out he was the illegitimate kid of the current head of the Elragon family. His mom died when he was just a baby, and he'd never even seen his dad's face, which he thought was a total deadbeat move. But the craziest part was realizing a whole 1,000 years had passed since he was reborn. Like reincarnation was already wild enough, but after 1,000 years the whole world was different. It was a legit survival of the fittest world now. The biggest proof, the whole feeding babies dragon blood thing, followed by this messed up ritual called the dragon trial. Only the kids who survived both the dragon blood cocktail and the trial were considered good enough to get trained as Elragon warriors. So obviously Zeke should have been in. But every time he asked the maid who looked after him why no trainer ever showed up, she'd just give him the same line about not being allowed to answer. He was 7 years old and hadn't gotten a single lesson. Kinda weird, right? Zeke thought out loud. Every other kid who passed the trial was supposed to start combat training. Everyone but him. It was just day after day alone with only the maid for company. When he called her out on it, she was just like, what's the problem? Zeke just sighed, figuring getting his body in shape was more important than fight training for now anyway. Besides, he could totally just teach himself if he felt like it. I mean, he was a 10-star warrior in his last life. So Zeke tried asking for any info on the other babies who made it or anything about the main family, but nope, the maid shut him down again. Said she wasn't allowed to spill any secrets. Zeke's face totally darkened. Are you ever gonna give me a straight answer? He snapped. The maid just stood her ground, saying she couldn't talk about it. Seriously, this is messed up, Zeke said, totally bitter. Why treat me like this? But she just said she was following orders. Her job was just to take care of his basic needs, and that's it. This maid was a 3-star practitioner, so she could have easily taught him the basics, but Zeke couldn't care less about that beginner stuff. After 7 years with this lady, he was used to her robot-like answers. Finally, Zeke was like, whatever, and decided to just head into the forest. The maid didn't say a word, just watched him go. Seriously, she's just gonna let me walk off, Zeke thought, getting pretty annoyed. Deep in the woods, he started yanking up poisonous plants and just chowing down on them. Tasted disgusting just like always, but it was all part of his training routine. Then all of a sudden, he felt something. He took a deep breath, trying to keep his cool, and just told himself, okay, chill, just chill. He could totally feel eyes on him from far away, like someone was watching his every single move. No matter what he did, he just couldn't shake the creepy vibe. After a minute, Zeke let out a huge sigh. Seriously? They followed me all the way out here? When he couldn't take it anymore, he yelled out, yo, you can come out now. If you've got something to say, just say it. Then he ducked into the tall grass, totally vanishing. A few moments later, while he was hiding out, Zeke felt this super dark, heavy vibe close by. When he peeked to see where it was coming from, he spotted a creature called an anger boar. Whoa, what is up with that aura? He wondered. The black mist swirling around the beast was totally new to him, something he hadn't seen even 1,000 years back. As the anger boar chomped on some grass, Zeke just popped up out of nowhere, totally freaking the boar out. It instantly charged right at him, but instead of being scared, Zeke just got this huge grin on his face. He was actually stoked for a fight. The boar lunged, but Zeke was way too quick and dodged it easily, pulling golden energy into his fist. With one massive strike, he unleashed an explosion that ripped right through the anger boar's body. He couldn't stop himself from smirking at the sight. His attack was way stronger than he thought it'd be. Even as a 1-star, he was already packing more punch than most other guys at his level. Throwing the dead creature over his shoulder, Zeke muttered, "This is gonna be even crazier once I level up my star." He was so over it. Tired of 7 years of being the invisible kid totally ghosted by the Elragon family. He was seriously thinking it was time to just bounce and go solo. Maybe even head out to the ocean or something. Meanwhile, way off in the distance, some dude in a cloak was watching the whole thing go down from the shadows. He muttered, "How is that even possible? No formal training and he's already a 1-star, and he took out that anger boar in one hit." But what really blew the guy's mind was how Zeke somehow knew he was there. "That kid is not normal," he whispered. He remembered Zeke's mom died when he was little, and his dad, the current family head, basically acted like he didn't exist. Without anyone to guide him, there's no way the kid should be this strong. But still, since he was the son of the Elragon head, legit or not, Zeke was always going to be on the clan's radar. That's why someone like him got the job of keeping tabs on the kid from the shadows. "An outcast son, but he's still got the head's blood in him," the man whispered. "Could that be why he's such a powerhouse?" Not sure what to think. He let out a little laugh. "Yeah, this kid's going to be interesting to watch." Then he just melted back into the shadows. Back at Zeke's place, the boy was throwing his stuff in a bag, getting ready to hit the road. But then out of nowhere, he felt these super strong vibes outside. 3 4-star practitioners and 1 5-star. What are these guys doing here, he thought, as he crept up to their door to eavesdrop. From their chat, he heard them going on about how fresh and clean the air was in a place so far out, and how peaceful it was since there weren't any rifts nearby. Hearing that, Zeke figured they weren't here to take him out. They actually sounded pretty harmless. Deciding to just face them head on, he swung the door open and asked, "What do you guys want?" The whole group totally froze, looking shocked. Then Zeke saw the symbol stitched on their clothes. The Elragon clan mark. "Ellen," he mumbled, wondering what in the world they wanted with him. The guys immediately bowed. "It's an honor to finally meet you, young Master Zeke," the leader said. "We're here to take you to your examination." "An exam, die?" Zeke's face scrunched up, totally confused and more than a little annoyed. "They seriously expect me to take an exam," he muttered, "when they haven't taught me a single thing." And after a few days, Zeke could barely believe he was back at the main Elragon family estate again. They told him he wasn't brought here to move back in, but for something else entirely. Before he could even go inside, they told him he had to change out of his dirty clothes first. Zeke then started thinking about this place they called the Dragon's Nest. After 1,000 years, the Elragon family had set up a school for every single branch of their family tree. Basically, anyone born with a drop of Elragon blood dreamed of getting into this so-called Dragon's Nest to get a real education once they turned 7 years old. And today just happened to be the day of the entrance ceremony for that academy. Zeke was here to take the entrance exam. Even though he knew nothing about his family's modern ways, taking the exam was mandatory. Zeke's heart just sank when he realized that this was the real reason they dragged him all the way back here. Seriously, why now? He thought, right, when he'd finally decided to get out and see the world. As he was just sitting by the school gate, some kid from Ortiscale village walked up to him. It was this guy, Rangus, and he asked if Zeke was okay and what was bugging him. When Zeke asked who he was, the kid formally introduced himself as Rangus and said he just came over because Zeke looked like he had a lot on his mind. "Oh, for real," Zeke replied casually. After checking out the energy flowing through Rangus, Zeke quietly thought to himself that the kid seemed a little shy but had this crazy sharp sense of perception. Zeke then kinda apologized for his mood, introduced himself, and admitted his mind was a mess because he had no clue what they were even gonna have to do for the exam. "Is that all you're worried about?" said Rangus, looking a little nervous himself now that the test was mentioned. Still, he explained that the annual entrance exam for the Dragon's Nest was pretty much the same every year. But when Zeke was like, "Exam, what exam?" Rangus totally freaked. Taking the test completely clueless. That was beyond reckless. It was straight up dangerous. Just as Rangus was about to give him the rundown, some loudmouth jerk cut them off. This super cocky dude started yelling, calling Rangus a total weakling. Rangus whipped around completely shocked, and he knew exactly who it was. Rhett, another kid from Ortiscale village. Making fun of him, Retton was all like, "Why are you here? Did you get lost and wander into the Dragon's Nest or something?" He even told him to just go home before he got himself hurt. "I'm here for the entrance exam," Rangus shot back, but his voice was shaking as Retton got right up in his face. He asked if he was seriously going to take the test. Retton literally grabbed his stomach and started howling with laughter, saying there was no way he'd pass. He even dissed Rangus's dad, saying, "Your old man's a pseudo-dragon, isn't he? What's the son of a pseudo-dragon gonna accomplish, huh?" Rangus's fists were shaking as he tried to keep his cool, but Zeke saw the whole thing go down. So then we got the lowdown. Apparently, the dragon family has this super strict hierarchy. The ranks go something like this. You've got novice whelp dragons, then the regular soldier kid dragons, captain level adult dragons, and executive elder dragons. You know the big bosses. And at the absolute bottom of the barrel were the pseudo-dragons. They're the ones who flunked out or never even got into the Dragon's Nest, basically considered immature, incomplete dragons. But Rangus had always dreamed of proving that even if everyone called them pseudo-dragons, they were still dragons, period. Zeke was kind of surprised and asked why Retin was so dead set on Rangus failing before the test even kicked off. And who the heck do you think you are? Retin snapped, asking if Zeke had a problem. Zeke just stayed cool and was like, I'm just curious why you're so sure Rangus can't pass. Retin pointed a finger at Rangus and yelled that the reason was totally obvious. He was just a weakling. Zeke just tilted his head and asked, You really think he's weak? Because from what I'm sensing, Rangus seems way stronger than you guys. Hearing that, Rangus's eyes went wide in disbelief. It was the first time anyone had ever stuck up for him. The arrogant jerks got super mad, asking if Zeke was seriously claiming they were weaker than a pseudo-dragon, a creature they totally saw as beneath them. But before things could blow up, some guy showed up and grabbed everyone's attention. He was the adult dragon examiner announcing that the Dragon's Nest entrance exam was about to start, and everyone needed to sign in and get their numbers. As Retin walked off, he shot Zeke a death glare and warned him, I won't forget your face. Zeke just sighed and said there was no need to get so bent out of shape, remarking that kids these days have such short fuses. Rangus quickly replied, Dude, that's not weird, we're all pretty much the same age. Rangus added that like anyone would get mad if you told them they were weaker than him. Is that so? Zeke muttered under his breath. Since the entrance exam was mandatory, they were stuck taking it. But Zeke was shocked when Rangus mentioned you could actually ditch the test. Zeke's eyes bugged out, and Rangus realized this guy seriously knew nothing about it. Rangus told him it might be smarter to just bail now before he got wrecked. But Zeke just shot back all confident, saying a genius like him never backs down from a challenge. Rangus could only shake his head, thinking Zeke was way too cocky for someone so clueless about the exam. Zeke just laughed and said that whatever the test was, they'd better get a move on because it was about to start. Rangus couldn't really argue with that. When they got to the testing area, the proctor announced that the exam was simple to pass. All they had to do was put a scratch on the stones behind him. The catch. No outside weapons allowed, only the ones the academy gave you. Still, you were free to use your bare hands if you wanted, but every kid only got 3 tries. Seriously, that's it, Zeke said, sounding totally underwhelmed. After surviving the dragon trial as a baby, he was expecting something way more intense. This just seemed kinda lame. The proctor then called up the first participant and told him to begin. The guy looked nervous but determined, and he swung at the huge stone with everything he had. The sound of metal hitting rock was crazy loud, making their ears ring. But then, to everyone's total shock, the kid's sword just snapped in two, and the kickback completely shattered his arm. Zeke was floored by what he just saw. While the kid was writhing on the ground in pain, the proctor just calmly said he still had 2 shots left, and asked if he wanted to keep going. But since the poor guy couldn't even stand up, the proctor declared him a fail, and told the others to clean up the mess. As the injured kid was dragged off, the next number was called. Rangus was literally shaking after seeing that. Meanwhile, Zeke was getting ticked off. So this is what they call an exam, he muttered. He then asked what the deal was with those stones. Turns out the stones had regenerative properties. Any scratch you made would just disappear instantly. On top of that, they could reflect any physical force back at you 100 times stronger. Zeke was like, whoa, that's way overkill for an entrance exam. But Rangus explained you could still scratch them. You just had to get your source power flowing through your whole body right before you hit it. I see, Zeke said. He totally got it now. Circulating source power was way more important than just fighting skills for this test. After checking out the other kids, he figured only a handful of them were actually going to pass. Yeah, even those cocky dudes. As the test dragged on, way more people were wiping out than actually passing. A ton of them got seriously messed up because the stone just bounced back any normal physical hits. Then a little later, the examiner shouted Zeke's number. Guess it's my turn, Zeke said, flashing a cool smile. Rangus, who was totally freaking out, asked if he was seriously not going to back out. But Zeke just strolled on up, telling him to chill. As he got closer to the examiner, the dude's eyes practically popped out of his head. Zeke's aura started to blaze, giving off a low-key hint of the insane power from his past life as Gilus. The examiner told him to step up and grab a weapon, but Zeke was like, nah, I'm good. He said his fists were all he needed. The crowd started whispering like, no way. They were all thinking that no matter how good he was at channeling source power, there was 0 chance he could even scratch that rock with his bare hands. His fists would totally break first. Some people were saying it wouldn't just be his fists, his whole arms would be toast, which made Rangus super worried for him. He started getting mad at himself, thinking he should have just dragged Zeke away to stop him from getting wrecked. Then the examiner gave the go-ahead. As Zeke walked up to the huge rock, he put his hand on it, thinking this was the first time he'd ever seen stuff like this. He figured it had to be formed like over 1,000 years ago. And even now there was still a lot of stuff about this era that he just didn't get. But whatever. He immediately channeled all his source power into his fist, while Rangus was shaking, totally stressing about what was going to happen to Zeke. Our boy was actually totally hyped because he could finally go all out for the first time. He decided to use this weird rock to test out how strong he was now. Rangus's eyes went wide again as Zeke let loose with the first form of the Dragon Destruction combat technique, Burst Strike, right on the stone. A massive blast of energy shot out when he hit it. Bits of the busted-up rock went flying everywhere, and the insane shockwave from the blast kicked up dust and junk all over the place. Stunned but still on his toes, Rangus quickly covered himself from the fallout while the examiner's eyes were bugging out. He couldn't believe what he just saw. As the dust started to clear, Zeke was just standing there with a grin saying that the technique he used was still a little too OP for his body right now. Even though his hand was totally messed up, he just laughed it off, thinking he still had to train way harder. The other contestants were totally floored by what they just saw. Reeton looked both pissed and stunned that Zeke had just wrecked the magic stone. Some girl watching was like, wow, that Zeke kid is seriously interesting. While everyone else was still trying to process what just happened, Zeke was just chilling, waiting for the examiner to call the results, but the guy was still completely frozen. The stone Zeke just shattered was supposed to fix itself, and the only people who could break it were supposed to be at the 4-star level or higher. But now some kid was standing in front of him, having done what should have been impossible. He's just an illegitimate son, the examiner mumbled to himself, then wondered if Zeke's power came from the head of the family's bloodline. That was still in his veins. He also realized the move Zeke used felt super familiar. Totally zoned out, the examiner didn't say anything, so Zeke got impatient and called out to him, asking what the verdict was. Snapping out of it, the examiner finally announced that Zeke passed the test. Then one of the other guys handed Zeke this little bottle with some green liquid inside. Zeke was curious and asked what it was, but the guy just asked if he could get out of the way already. Annoyed, Zeke scowled and mumbled something about how rude everyone in this generation was. Before he could say anything else, Rangus ran over totally pumped and started gushing about how awesome Zeke was. Zeke just smirked and said it was a piece of cake. Zeke asked again what the liquid was, and Rangus explained it was a healing potion, the standard issue kind for the Elragon family. A healing potion, Zeke repeated. Rangus nodded, confirming it. But since Zeke wasn't exactly a favorite son of the family, his first thought was that it might be poison. Still, since Rangus said it was legit, he wondered if it was actually some kind of spirit medicine. The elixir, called Cloud-Piercing Clarity Wood, was made from super rare ingredients like herbs you can only find in hidden realms, plus pure source power from god-tier beasts, and the essence of crazy elusive phantom beasts. When you use it, it can heal not just new cuts, but old injuries and even scars. Plus, it could actually boost your source power. Because the ingredients were so rare and it was so complicated to make, you almost never saw elixirs like that. After drinking it, Zeke was blown away by how fast it worked on his body. Is this for real a spirit medicine? He asked Rangus. Rangus said he had no idea what spirit medicine even meant, but he knew for a fact the Elragon family's potions were way better than the stuff you could buy anywhere else. Then Rangus asked if the potion's effect was really that surprising to Zeke. Duh, Zeke said, explaining that it fixed up his messed up hand and even all the aches from his training. Still, he noticed that unlike a real spirit medicine, it didn't seem to give his source power a boost. Rangus, though, said he was even more blown away by Zeke himself, which made Zeke laugh and tell him to stop messing around. Zeke thought to himself that potion was proof of how much tech had totally leveled up over the last 1,000 years. Rangus was hyping Zeke's strength again, and Zeke was all like, my dream is to be the strongest one out there, period. A minute later, the examiner announced that Retin and his whole crew had passed the test too. Zeke totally saw that coming, but then Rangus started shaking like a leaf when they called his number, despite being terrified. He sucked it up and walked to the front. Watching how stiff he was, Zeke wondered why Rangus was so on edge, then shouted some encouragement, telling him to just trust himself. Totally embarrassed, Rangus begged him to keep it down. When Rangus picked up a sword, Zeke watched him like a hawk, wondering what his game plan was. As soon as the examiner gave the signal, Rangus went for the stone, but just like he probably figured, he totally failed his first try. He got back up, determined to try again, but his sword just bounced right off, making him lose his balance and wipe out. His hands were trembling from the stone's crazy rebound power. Retin and his posse just burst out laughing, saying it was exactly what they expected. The son of a fake dragon is nothing but a fake dragon himself. They were totally trashing him, telling him to just give up. Rhett even shot a smirk at Zeke, asking if this was the same guy he claimed could pass and if Rangus was seriously stronger than them. Zeke was quiet for a second, then told them to shut their mouths. The examiner told Rangus he only had one try left and asked if he was still gonna go for it. Rangus couldn't even answer, he was so humiliated and getting roasted by everyone. He just hung his head, but then Zeke walked right up to him and was like, dude, what are you doing? He asked why Rangus was using a sword instead of a spear, why he'd pick a weapon that's so not his style, and why he'd even take the test without any kind of plan. Retin just watched with a smirk as Zeke told Rangus that in his current state, he wouldn't even leave a scratch on the stone no matter how many times he tried. Retin and his crew started laughing again, calling Zeke a total idiot and reminding him that Rangus knew nothing about using a spear. They said his weak sauce father only ever taught him swordsmanship, and switching weapons now wouldn't change a thing. But Zeke just ignored their trash talk and called out to the examiner, asking if it was against the rules to swap weapons. The examiner said it wasn't. Well, looks like it's Rangus's lucky day, Zeke said with a grin. He turned to Rangus and asked if he trusted him. Memories of all the crap he and his dad had been through flashed through Rangus's mind. Gritting his teeth, he stood up straight and said he'd trust Zeke. He'd fight with a spear just like Zeke told him to. Rangus told us his dad never actually made it into the dragon's nest. Because of that, people called him a fake dragon and totally laughed at him. But even with all that humiliation, his dad took all of it just so he could raise Rangus right. That's why Rangus swore he'd prove to everyone that Rangus, the son his dad raised with so much care, is a true dragon too. He stood up one more time, gripping the spear tight in his hands, and declared that today he was going to prove that he and his dad were not fakes. He also knew that trying again with a sword would just get him the same lame result. So this time he decided to put all his faith in Zeke. The only hang-up was that he had zero clue how to use a spear. Zeke called out to him and pointed at the enchanted stone, telling Rangus there was nothing else he had to do. Just thrust the spear straight into the stone and don't think about anything else. Just run it straight through, Zeke said, dead serious. Rangus tightened his grip on the spear. He knew that normally just stabbing the stone head-on wouldn't do the slightest bit of damage, especially since it had some insane regeneration power. But Zeke was the first person to ever have his back, even though they had literally just met that day. It was a new and weird feeling for him. But because of that, he chose to trust Zeke completely and believe in his own power. This time he channeled his source power into the spear, and immediately felt something was off in a good way. He'd used a sword for years, but he'd never been able to wrap it in this much source energy, which he was now doing with the spear like it was second nature. With a massive shout, Rangus unleashed his full power and slammed the stone with everything he had. Retin was about to die laughing, saying he totally called it. That changing weapons wouldn't help him pass. But Rangus didn't stop. He felt something different, something huge. The spear in his hands felt like it was a part of his own body. Then, as he drove the weapon forward with all his might, the spear completely blasted through the enchanted stone. The look of pure shock on Retin's face and his friends was absolutely priceless. Even the examiners couldn't hide how stunned they were, totally stoked by what they just saw. Rangus didn't just scratch the stone, he punched a hole straight through it. Zeke immediately gave him props. Rangus himself could barely believe what he'd just done. Even after the examiner officially announced he'd passed, Rangus was still asking in disbelief if he really did it. Zeke just smiled, threw an arm around his shoulder and told him he did. Overwhelmed with joy, Rangus almost started crying as he gave Zeke a massive hug, yelling over and over that he'd done it, that he'd passed the test. Rhet's crew, though, just refused to believe it. They were calling it a fluke, but Retin himself was dead silent, just shaking with rage. He couldn't accept that just like Zeke had said, Rangus was actually stronger than them, and that he'd totally crushed it. Then the proctor announced that the test was officially a wrap. A minute later, he said the welcome ceremony was about to start. Zeke immediately shot back, "Wait, for real, it's over." Rangus was like, "Yeah, looks like it, but I bet there'll be more tests once we're actually inside the dragon's nest." A few seconds later, a group of guys stepped out of a super dark hallway. When they hit the light, the proctor announced that the head of the Elragon family was about to give a speech to congratulate everyone who passed. The second Zeke saw the main guy, he was like, "Who's Mr. Dark and Stormy over there?" Rangus, looking totally freaked, whispered that it was the family head himself. "So that's the family head?" Zeke muttered. "What's his deal? He's not even cracking a smile. Dude looks colder than ice." Rangus immediately slapped a hand over Zeke's mouth, hissing that he seriously needed to stay quiet. Zeke just nodded. Looking at the group again, he realized these guys were basically the Elragon family's current heavy hitters. Some of them were at a 7-star level, while others were 6-star. Zeke had to admit their power level was insane, especially since the head honcho Gilus Elragon was an 8-star powerhouse. 1,000 years ago, only a couple of people had ever reached that level. Still, Zeke had no idea how many were running around in this era. "I'm not feeling this guy's vibe," Zeke mumbled. But before he could say more, Rangus tried to shush him again. Zeke sighed, thinking to himself, "You've got to be kidding me. This guy is my dad in this lifetime." A dark, fiery aura was just radiating off Balsa's body, making the whole room feel super heavy. The proctor quickly ordered everyone to zip it because Master Balsa was about to speak. When Balsa stepped up, he legit only said a few words. He said we all had to become the flesh and blood of the Elragon family. As he spoke, this terrifying pressure from his aura just washed over the hall. Zeke was totally unfazed, but tons of the other kids were trembling. Some were even struggling to breathe like they were frozen by the intense pressure. Zeke noticed that even Rangus was getting hit by it. He couldn't believe how easily everyone was getting wrecked by the family head's presence. On top of that, Zeke could feel this intense hatred hiding inside Balsa's aura. He didn't have a clue why, but even so, he just couldn't bring himself to like the man who was supposedly his father. When Balsa turned away, another guy stepped forward, getting everyone's attention. He had blonde hair and cheerfully thanked Balsa for his words. He then said that Master Balsa had high hopes for all of them, and just like his master, he was going to keep his own speech short. As Zeke was wondering who this dude was, the speaker just told everyone to train hard and get stronger. "That's it," one of the proctors muttered. The guy just grinned and said that people who worry too much about the little things go bald early, so he wasn't about to bore them with a long speech. Zeke had no idea what was up with these people, but at least the vibe in the hall had chilled out a little. The proctor then announced that the new students were about to get their dorm assignments. As soon as your number was called, you had to head out. Zeke asked if they weren't all staying in the same dorm, and Rangus explained that there were 4 the East, West, South, and North dorms. Every student who got accepted got to live in one of those 4 halls. When Zeke's number was finally called, he stood up and waved bye to Rangus. He'd been assigned to the East Hall. As he walked down the corridor, he thought to himself that this place had changed a ton in the last 1,000 years. After finally finding his room, he figured he must have gotten lost since it took him forever to get there, and his roommate had probably already shown up. When he pushed the door open, he cheerfully greeted his new roomie and apologized for being late. He said, "Looks like we're sharing," but to his total shock, his new roommate was none other than Rangus himself. Zeke couldn't help but laugh, saying it felt like fate kept throwing them together. He asked if there was anything else planned for the day, and Rangus confirmed that training kicked off tomorrow. "Oh, for real," Zeke said casually, which made Rangus ask if he even bothered listening to the proctor's explanation earlier. Zeke just admitted that he hadn't on purpose. Rangus just sighed and said they should probably get some sleep since training started the next day. As Zeke stared out the window, he thought about his plan to bounce from the Elragon family and travel the world. But after everything he'd learned about that magic stone with Regan powers and the healing potion, he realized he'd found a lot of interesting stuff during the exam. If he really wanted to get the full scoop on all the changes from the last 1,000 years, he thought then maybe sticking with the Elragon family for a while wouldn't be such a bad idea after all. A month at the academy flew by, and their training just got more intense, like holding crazy heavy dumbbells in both hands. The instructor explained that the dragon's breath technique he was teaching them was one of the most legendary techniques ever created by the 15th Elragon family head. After drilling it into their heads that they had to master it no matter what the instructor's attention zeroed in on, a few students. Some of them he noted had already nailed dragon's breath, especially the young woman he called Master Leah. Her energy was totally off the charts, which basically meant she was crazy close to hitting the 2-star level. But besides her, some other dude caught his eye, and he seriously couldn't believe it. Zeke was training not just holding dumbbells, but he was also balancing huge rocks on his head and arms. The instructor just stared totally floored and mumbled to himself that Zeke definitely had the family head's blood running through him. But the rumor was that nobody ever taught Zeke a thing growing up, which is why all this stuff he was seeing felt so foreign. Zeke, though, was tripping that the technique he used to call the Dragon King's breathing technique got an upgrade from the family heads after him, and now they were teaching it to the other family branches too. From Zeke's POV, breathing techniques were all about pulling source power from everything around you into your body. Once you get it flowing, that source power would juice up your own inner energy. How well it worked totally depended on your own skills and smarts. That's why the big shot families in this world kept their techniques on lockdown, never letting outsiders or anyone not in their bloodline learn them. Zeke also figured out that the dragon's breath was a super safe and basic technique, pretty easy to get the hang of, but it was totally useless to him if you could only use it while chilling. His own version of the breathing technique let him mess with the source power around him even when he was on the move. Because of that, it was way more complicated and powerful in a real fight, but also a lot harder to learn, like only a handful of people ever mastered it. He figured the new generation must have dumbed down his original version so even the branch family members could pick it up. And that call clearly made the Eldragon family stronger. Zeke couldn't help but feel kind of satisfied about it. He never thought the moves he came up with way back when would still be making waves 1,000 years later. It got him thinking if the other martial arts styles he invented had changed over time too. Interesting, he mumbled to himself, kinda entertained by the idea. Meanwhile, Laika was quietly watching Zeke from far away. Later in the cafeteria, the other students were shook by how much food Zeke was putting away. As he kept inhaling his meal, he saw Rangus just sitting there silently across from him. "What's up?" Zeke asked. "You're not gonna get strong if you don't eat." Rangus just asked if Zeke thought his stamina was weird. "That's all it is," Zeke shot back. "You just gotta eat more if you want to get stronger. Train harder. Push yourself." He even offered Rangus some of his food, but the guy politely turned him down, saying he was full. As Zeke was thinking about how some of the students were already total pros before even getting to the academy, some girl just walked up to them. "You're pretty impressive," Laika said, her voice all cool and confident. Zeke blinked. "And who are you supposed to be?" he asked, super casual. Rangus literally choked on his food and whispered all nervously, "You don't know who that is? That's Master Laika, the daughter of the family head, Lord Balza." "Oh," Zeke said, not caring at all. "What am I supposed to do about it? I don't know her." Rangus started sweating bullets. "You can't talk like that. Master Laika is one of the top candidates to be the next family head. She's not someone you can just talk to all casual." "Is that right?" Zeke shot back. "Well, I'm a family head's kid too. The illegitimate one, I guess." Rangus totally froze while Laika just gave him a curious look. "Is that for real?" she asked. "You're actually the family head's illegitimate son." The narrator's voice chimed in. Laika Typhon Eldragon, one of the contenders to take over the Eldragon family, was now standing right in front of Zeke. "Why would I lie about something like that?" Zeke said with a shrug. Laika's brow furrowed a little. "Then tell me, how could a kid like you, an illegitimate one, shatter a magic stone with your bare hands? How could someone from a no-name family have that kind of power?" "Because I'm Zeke," he said, all confident, turning back to Rangus. "Stop gawking and finish your food." Both Laika and Rangus went quiet for a second. Then Laika suddenly cracked a smile. You really are an interesting guy, she said, sliding into the seat next to him. How about you work for me, I'll make you one of my crew. Zeke raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I want you on my team, she said. Be my ally and I'll have your back. Every illegitimate kid needs connections and power, right? Use that strength of yours to help me become the next family head. And when I do, I'll help you get whatever you want. Zeke didn't even blink. Nah, he said straight up. Laika frowned again. Why not don't tell me you're trying to be the family head yourself? As her aura flared up with this crackling energy, Zeke could tell she was super close to hitting that 2-star level. For a girl her age to be putting out an aura like that, she was definitely the real deal. Still, Zeke was totally chill. You can think whatever you want, he said. But I'm not interested in being the family head or getting any kind of title. Why? Laika asked, her voice like ice. Zeke slammed his knife into the table. Because I don't need to work for anyone, he said, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. I'm the strongest one there is. The whole cafeteria went dead silent. Even Laika couldn't believe what she was feeling. For a second there, Zeke's vibe just completely overpowered her. Rangus jumped in right away to break the tension, telling them both to chill. But Laika wasn't the type to back down, all embarrassed and ticked off by what just went down. She decided to challenge Zeke to a fight. Zeke, though, looked like he couldn't care less and just kept on eating. A few moments later, a huge buzz started spreading across campus. Yo, where's everyone going? One student asked. To the training grounds, another shot back. A duel's about to go down between the younger General. Master Leah herself is fighting. What Master Leah from the Typhon fam? Someone else yelled. Who's got the guts to challenge her? When they got to the training grounds, everyone was whispering, wondering who was going to face her. Zeke, meanwhile, couldn't believe Laika was actually for real about the duel. Dude, are you good with this? Rangus asked, sounding totally nervous. You're going to fight Master Leah. You can call her Master, but I have no idea who she is. Zeke shot back bluntly. Rangus sighed. You should at least try to show some respect, now that I know you're the family head's son, too. Do whatever you want, Zeke said. But Rangus still tried to explain. The important thing right now is that you get who you're up against. Master Leah isn't just some rando. She's the daughter of Lord Gilus Elragon, and she's also got the blood of the Typhon family, one of the 4 big families that back the Elragons. She's a total prodigy who mastered every single form of the Typhon family's lightning greatsword technique when she was a kid. Just like her dad's other kids, her talent is terrifying. Zeke tilted his head. I literally didn't get a word of that except that she's the family head's daughter. Rangus just stared at him. How do you seriously not know any of this? Because I don't, Zeke said plain and simple. So don't ask. Rangus blinked as Zeke suddenly cracked up. But since I don't know anything about her, he said with a smirk, that'll just make the fight more interesting. Sounds fun. Rangus could only sigh and stress out. No matter how strong Zeke was, Master Leah was on a whole other level. Why did you even take her challenge? He asked. I never backed down from a fight, Zeke answered. And it looks like my challenger is all set anyway. Just then, Laika stood with her sword planted in the ground, her aura flaring up with faint lightning crackling around her. Are you two done with your little chat? She asked coldly. Laika yelled, asking if they were finally done talking, and Zeke said he was ready. Rangus, shaking from fear and shock, immediately bolted away from them, yelling at Zeke to be careful. Zeke then turned to Laika and asked why she was so set on fighting him. Leah explained that she wanted to become the next head of the Elragon family. And to pull that off, she needed to beat Zeke and make him one of her crew. What's that supposed to mean? Zeke asked, wondering what he had to do with her dream of being the family head. Laika shot back a question, asking if he really had no clue about their family's whole situation, and if being an illegitimate kid was the reason he was so out of the loop. Zeke just said he didn't, admitting he barely knew anything about their family. Because of that, Laika started to break it all down. She said that counting both of them, there were 5 candidates trying to become the next family head. Except for Zeke, all of her siblings were connected to the 4 major branch families of the Elragon clan. The job of family head was so important that it turned into the huge rivalry between those branches. For that reason, all of Zeke's siblings went to the Dragon's Nest to study and rep their own families. Since the fight for the top spot had turned into a crazy competition, Laika needed strong allies to go up against her older brothers. Zeke figured it out pretty fast that this was just a power struggle. Between the 4 main branches of the Elragon family, he thought it was all way too complicated, and wasn't even sure he wanted to get it. Laika kept going, saying that as one of the candidates for family head, she needed to boost not just her knowledge and power, but also her influence by getting strong people on her side. Without saying another word, she charged right for Zeke, declaring that she was going to beat him right then and there to make him join her team. But Zeke easily dodged her powerful hit along with the storm of attacks that came right after. Still, Laika refused to let him get away. The crowd couldn't believe what they were seeing. Their speed was just insane. Laika's attacks, even with that heavy greatsword, were flowing so smoothly and fast that it looked almost easy. As they watched the siblings battle, the crowd started whispering about Laika's perfect control over her source power, noticing how her hits were getting faster and stronger every second. They could only be amazed by the power of a true daughter of the family head from one of the main branches. Some even said the fight's outcome was a sure thing. What they didn't know, though, was that Laika herself was getting more and more frustrated. She couldn't get how Zeke kept dodging every single one of her attacks, or why it felt like he was just playing with her. Angus, who was watching from a distance, couldn't help but be impressed, his earlier worries just vanishing as he saw Zeke's chill movements. Zeke then mentioned that the fighting style Leah was using was unlike anything he'd ever seen. He admitted her moves were way faster than any regular one-star level fighter. But Leah, annoyed, yelled at him to shut up and focus on their fight. Zeke clenched his fist and said he was already focused, and that was the entire point. It was insane how he just dropped a punch that powerful like it was nothing. The hit landed dead on, and Laika immediately gagged. She just crumpled to her knees, clutching her sword and her gut totally in agony. The crowd totally lost it, whispering like crazy, trying to figure out how Zeke was dodging all of Laika's moves and who this mystery guy even was. As Laika struggled to get back on her feet, she asked how none of her hits were landing. She knew she was way faster than any other one-star fighter. So logically, there was no way Zeke should be able to keep up. Zeke admitted that, yeah, she was legit the fastest one-star he'd ever seen. But to him, she was still just a one-star. Hello, you're a one-star too, Laika snapped, saying he shouldn't be able to match her speed at all. It's actually pretty simple, Zeke replied. You're breathing the way your eyes move, even the tiniest twitch of your muscles. I can read all of it. By watching all those little tells, I can predict your next move. It all comes down to experience. You've got to be kidding me, Laika yelled, lunging at him with another super-fast strike. But Zeke dodged it again like it was nothing, saying that just like he said, he could see and read her every single move. In the next second, he hit her with a massive counterattack that sent Laika slamming into the wall hard. The crowd screamed, totally shocked, asking if Laika was actually down for the count. Master Zeke, that was insane. You beat Master Leah, Rangus shouted, completely hyped. But Zeke just calmly said it wasn't over yet. Their fight wasn't finished. As the dust settled, Laika was standing again, bruised but looking totally defiant. Zeke realized she had focused her source power into her core, letting her tank his attack, without getting seriously messed up. He gave a small smile and admitted that Laika was a seriously incredible girl. That's enough, Master Leah, Rangus pleaded, but Zeke just told him to get back, warning him that he could get caught in the middle of their next clash. Then Zeke felt this intense surge of aura just pouring off Laika. He wondered if she'd just leveled up to 2-star. The spectators noticed it too. There was no mistaking it. The glowing mark on her body was proof she'd for real become a 2-star with a white aura. The 2-star level was the stage, where you could channel source power right into your martial arts, even letting it explode out of your body. Laika actually thanked Zeke, saying that because of him, she hit the 2-star level way sooner than expected. But because of that, she declared, "You have zero chance of winning now." With her aura flaring, she charged right at Zeke, her huge sword just glowing with insane power. Zeke just laughed. He looked genuinely stoked. "Whoa, you've really leveled up," he said, all excited as he dodged another lightning-fast attack. "Your speed is incredible now." But his whole expression changed when he felt a sting on his cheek. A small cut. Wait, I know I dodged that, Zeke thought. Laika just smirked and asked if he was finally seeing the power gap between them. "This is my real power," she said proudly. "Now that I'm a full 2-star and I've got my aura, I'm gonna show you the true power of the truth under greatsword technique." "Oh, cool, so I get to see a fighting style I've never seen before," Zeke said, grinning with excitement. For him, this was turning into the most awesome and fun part of the entire fight. Laika suddenly unleashed her lightning greatsword technique lightning flash, and her sword started crackling with this blinding golden energy as she charged. Zeke was immediately swallowed by a storm of lightning, forcing him to jump back a step as he yelled, "Whoa, hold up! What kind of move was that? How are you controlling lightning like that? Isn't this a little intense for a sparring match?" Laika just smirked, slamming her sword into the ground as golden light surged all around her. "You seem surprised," she said coolly, calling up another move. Lightning net. Sparks shot up from the ground, forming a glowing web of electricity that flew at Zeke, but he barely dodged it. As he landed, he muttered to himself, "Her power-up is insane. Her strength is on a whole other level now. At this rate, this fight is not going to be easy." The crowd was buzzing in awe, totally unable to hide how amazed they were. Ever since Leah had powered up to the 2-star level, the whole fight had completely flipped. Rangus, who was watching like his life depended on it, started to get seriously worried. Zeke noticed that Laika's moves were still simple, nothing new from her 1-star self. But now, every single swing of her sword packed way more of a punch. Her lightning greatsword technique was just overflowing with power, her aura amping up every strike. What really blew Zeke's mind was the speed. Laika was moving way faster than he could have ever guessed, and her lightning felt weirdly mysterious. Still, he felt pretty confident even if she could wrap herself in thunder. He was sure he could figure out a counter. But he was also super curious. What even is this power? What kind of lightning can she command? While dodging her non-stop attacks, he studied her every move, analyzing her aura and its rhythm. Laika, seeing Zeke's chill little smile as he danced away from her attacks, frowned but kept her own smile. "You look way too relaxed for someone in a duel," she sneered. "Let's see how long that lasts." She dashed forward again, her sword blazing with light as she used swift thunder, completely covering herself in golden lightning. But again, Zeke dodged at the very last second. She's literally as fast as lightning. He thought only for Laika to swing her sword mid-charge. The hit landed this time, sending Zeke flying backward with a massive shockwave that kicked up dust and debris all over the field. Rangus gasped and tried to run to Zeke in a total panic, but one of the other spectators grabbed his arm to stop him. Meanwhile, Zeke was getting back on his feet. His clothes were totally fried, but he was not backing down. Laika charged again, unleashing another lightning blast that hit him square on. And yet Zeke was still standing. No way. How is he still standing? Laika muttered, completely baffled. Rangus sprinted toward them, screaming, "Laika, stop! That's enough, we've all seen how strong you are." But Laika just gave him an ice-cold glare. "Don't you get it, Rangus?" Stopping in the middle of a fight would be a total diss to Zeke. Desperate, Rangus turned to Zeke, pleading, "Please, Zeke, just surrender. It's enough already." Laika just chuckled. "He's got a point. Looking at you giving up would be the smart move. If you kneel and swear you're loyal to me, I'll call it quits." But Zeke just gave her a quiet smile. Laika's whole vibe got serious. "You know, for an outcast, you've got some serious dragon pride," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. She raised her huge sword high, her aura flaring up. "If this is how you want to play it, then I'm going all out to finish you." Lightning just crashed down from the sky as Laika unleashed her #1 secret move, Heaven's Thunder. A massive wave of golden energy slammed down, completely shattering the ground beneath Zeke's feet. Thunderbolts hammered at his body in a storm of pure power. Rangus screamed in terror, watching his friend get totally engulfed by golden lightning smoke pouring off his charred body. Laika drove her sword into the ground, let out a deep breath, and said softly, "I'm sorry, Zeke, but this is it." But then a voice echoed through the static-filled air. "You really think so?" In a split second, a blinding golden lightning aura just exploded into the sky. Laika's eyes flew open in shock as she spun around. "Impossible! How can this be? How do you have a lightning aura?" she stammered. Zeke just stood there, smiling calmly as golden sparks danced all over his skin. "So this is what you call a lightning aura?" he asked casually. "If you're asking how I got it, I honestly have no clue." His tone was chill, but his words sent a shockwave through the crowd. "Impossible," Laika whispered, unable to process what she was seeing. Zeke smirked. "The truth is, I let you hit me on purpose. I wanted to study your lightning, see how it flows, how it moves, and somehow I picked up how to use it myself." "That's insane, asterisk," Laika thought, fuming. Zeke realized he had intentionally taken her hits because her lightning was just so interesting. While he was taking her hits, he just kept using his Dragon King's breath technique. The weird connection between his breathing and her lightning made all this golden energy start building up inside him. Before he even knew it, he could control the lightning himself. Asterisk? Maybe Laika is just built different, asterisk, he thought. Asterisk. And judging by her family's sword-fighting style, it's probably their whole family that has this lightning thing going on. Zeke walked toward her, totally confident. "I never knew lightning-type source power could be this epic. This duel was the ultimate training session." With a grin, he added, "Thanks to you, Laika, I've hit the 2-star level myself." Golden lightning flared up around him as he declared, "Our fight is so not over yet." Laika let out a roar and charged again, her massive sword glowing with power, launching another blinding attack. But Zeke dodged it like it was nothing and got ready for a counterattack. However, as he started to move, he suddenly vanished in a flash and reappeared on the total opposite side of the arena. "Whoa, what just happened?" he muttered. Then it clicked. When you get a massive boost in source power, it supercharges your muscles and nerves. This new lightning aura must have totally rewired my body. I can't even fully control my speed yet. In the stands, Rangus was totally speechless. He couldn't even follow them anymore. Both of them were just blurs of golden light and thunder. Asterisk. Am I just seeing things, or has Laika not landed a single hit in a while? Asterisk, he wondered. Frustrated, Laika yelled, "Are you mocking me, Zeke? Stop messing with me?" "I'm not," Zeke replied, super calm. "But I'll give you this, you're a serious threat." He then lunged forward, throwing a powerful kick, but Laika blocked it with her sword, the sheer force sending her flying backward. Zeke stood up straight, smirking. "I think it's about time to end this." "End this," Laika shot back, narrowing her eyes. "Yep," Zeke replied. "I've been brainstorming a new technique for a bit, and this feels like the perfect moment to test it out." "Creating a new technique," she said, totally skeptical. Zeke nodded. "Exactly." He paused for a second, then mumbled, "Should I call it a first form, or maybe a special form?" Laika blinked, completely lost. Asterisk. Did this guy even get real combat training? What family could he have possibly learned that from? Asterisk? She wondered, her mind spinning. Before she could even react, Zeke appeared right beside her in a flash, lightning surging in his hand. "Dragon Destruction Combat Arts Special Form." "Lightning Peak," he shouted. The attack hit her dead on, wrapping her in a wild storm of golden thunder. Her body shook violently. Her sword slipped out of her hand, and she collapsed to her knees in front of him, electricity still crackling all around her. The whole arena went dead silent. Rangus and the others just stared, totally blown away. Zeke had won. Laika, lying on the ground, let out a shaky breath. After a few seconds, she forced herself to sit up still, trembling. Asterisk, I can't believe I lost. I was supposed to be the next head of the family. I can't lose. Not to anyone, asterisk, she thought bitterly. Zeke walked over to her, offering his hand. You were awesome, Laika. Seriously strong, he said, and he really meant it. It's always cool to learn something new. This fight was so worth it. Smiling warmly, he added, It'd be boring if this was the last time we ever fought. Let's have another sparring match sometime. Laika froze, her cheeks flushing red as she stared at his hand. Even though she'd lost, you could see a faint hint of happiness on her face. Maybe it was pride, or maybe for the first time ever she was actually impressed. Zeke was all like, we should totally have a rematch soon. With this super confident smile, he added that he was totally hyped for their next fight. Laika, looking a little shy, held out her hand to him, admitting he was just on another level, and that she was cool with losing. Meanwhile, a few hours later, deep inside some freaky dimensional rift, Gilus Elragon, Lee and Zeke's dad, and the head honcho of the Elragon family was surrounded by tons of bizarre and wild monsters. As the creatures came charging at him, Gilus' eyes lit up with this intense glow, letting out a crushing wave of aura and dragon pressure. He legit froze every single creature in its tracks, while pulling out his sword. Gilus called on the first form genesis of the dragon destruction combat arts. With one slick move, all the monsters around him were sliced clean in half. As he put his sword away, the Elragon family soldiers rushed in to finish off any monsters that somehow survived their boss's hit. Gilus turned to head out of the rift. But before he could bounce, one of the soldiers called out to him, saying he had an important report. Gilus stopped and asked what was up. The soldier told him that Lady Laika had hit the 2-star level. Hearing this, Gilus just stopped cold. His glowing eyes flickered and his reply was totally icy and distant. So what? The soldier, who was obviously nervous, explained that hitting the 2-star level at just 7 years old was a crazy big deal. He said that with Laika's talent, once she graduated from Dragon's Nest, she'd probably hit the 4-star level or maybe even the 5-star level. Gilus's reply was straight up chilling. Talent means jack. Next time you report to me, I want to hear how she can be useful to us. If all you bring me are worthless updates like this, you can get out of my sight. The soldier went quiet as Gilus started walking toward the rift's exit again. But right before he stepped through, the soldier quickly added that Laika had just lost a sparring match. Gilus stopped dead in his tracks and turned his head slightly, his face giving nothing away. Did she lose to one of her brothers? He asked. The soldier shook his head. Nah, master. She was beaten by someone her own age. By Lord Zeke. Zeke, Gilus repeated, his voice low. That woman's son. He started flashing back to a quiet maid. Zeke's mom. That woman was a legit beast in a fight, he muttered. But she died right after having the boy. He turned all the way around to face the soldier, his tone sharp. Tell me who in the world could have trained Zeke to beat a 2-star cultivator? The soldier hesitated for a second before answering. No one, master. Lord Zeke's never had any official training. He beat Lady Laika, just with his own strength and skill. In fact, he's already hit the 2-star level too. I see, Gilus said flatly. Then turning his back again, he declared, begin the first trial. The soldier looked totally shocked. Master Gilus, sorry to interrupt, but isn't it way too soon for the first trial? It's only been a month since the students even started combat training. Most of them haven't even made it to the 1-star level yet. Gilus cut him off. I don't care. Death doesn't care about timing levels or playing favorites. Only the strong deserve to make it. Star levels don't mean a thing if they can't survive the first trial. Those who fail aren't worthy of the Elragon name. Yes, master, the soldier replied super fast. But then Gilus added, also, get Freya! Tell her I want her back here immediately. The soldier's eyes went wide like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Freya, master? You don't mean asterisk that asterisk Freya? Gilus nodded. I do. If Zeke beat Laika using only his own power, then he's way more interesting than I thought. I want Freya to design and run the first trial herself, and I expect her to personally watch every single participant. The soldier bowed low. As you command, Master Gilus. For the first time in a long, long time, a tiny smile touched Gilus' lips. A super rare, almost warm look flashed across his face as he said softly, he's the most interesting one of them all. The next day at Dragon's Nest, the students were back at their combat training with Reincarnation. Zeke, though, was off to the side practicing his breathing. He was in a wall sit, balancing a giant boulder on his head while holding dumbbells in each hand. His insane focus got the attention of Reincarnation, and all the others who couldn't help but just watch him in silence. With his eyes closed, Zeke was thinking over the technique they were learning, the Strike Dragon combat arts. As he remembered it, this technique was made by the 15th head of the family. Even though they called it a combat art, it was really a way to power up your body. Simple, but put together really well, so even young cultivators could get the hang of it. Reincarnation yelled out, Zeke, aren't you gonna train? Zeke opened one eye. What do you mean? I mean combat training, Reincarnation shot back. We're practicing the Strike Dragon combat arts. I already learned that, Zeke answered casually. Reincarnation was stunned. What, but we were just taught it this morning. How could you have mastered it already? Because I'm me, Zeke said with a smirk. But what's more important right now is that your source power is flowing all wrong. My what? Rangus asked, totally confused. Zeke put down the heavy boulder from his head and told Rangus to turn around. Putting his hand on Rangus's back, Zeke pushed his aura through Rangus's body, fixing the flow of his energy. There, he said. That's how your aura is supposed to circulate. Rangus spun around to face him, totally grateful. Dude, you've completely mastered the Strike Dragon combat arts for real. That's insane. Zeke gave him a playful frown. Whoa, are you doubting me, some friend you are? No, not at all, Rangus said super fast. It's just besides my dad, no one's ever broken it down for me like that. That's why I'm trying to soak it all in. You, Lord Zeke, already have your own style, one that was strong enough to take down Lady Leah. I just figured the Strike Dragon stuff would be like way too simple and lame for a guy like you. Nah, it's not lame, Zeke shot back. Actually, dig how solid it is. It kind of reminds me of my own Dragon Destruction combat arts. My kids were never into that technique, though. They said it was way too hard and complicated. The Dragon Destruction? Arts was a legit complex and demanding style, but its power was off the charts. It had 4 main forms, and during his fight with Leah, Zeke actually came up with a 5th. On top of that, there was a secret final form, a seriously terrifying and destructive move, the same one he'd used to slay that divine dragon back in his past life. He quietly wondered how. His descendants had handled his other dragon techniques over the years. Maybe they remixed them or something. The thought just got him more hyped. Anyway, he said, since I've already got the Strike Dragon arts down, I'm just gonna stick with my physical training. He gave a slight smile. Everyone's got their own way of learning this stuff. But before he could say more, Rangus totally shouted his name. Zeke, please teach me. I know this is a totally shameless ask, but I want to get stronger even just a little bit. Zeke looked at him for a second, then nodded. All right, I'll teach you. Rangus blinked, completely shocked. Wait, for real, you'll actually teach me? Of course, Zeke replied. Why do you look so surprised? You're the one who asked. I just didn't think you'd agree so easily, Rangus said, looking embarrassed. I'm not messing with you, Zeke said, and I can tell you're worth teaching. Just then, Leah walked up to them. She seemed kind of hesitant, but then she spoke up. Zeke, I'd like you to teach me too. Rangus turned to her, startled. You too, Lady Leah? Is that a problem? She asked, super calm. Honestly, I used to think no one my age could ever beat me. As a candidate to be the next head of the Elragon family, I was totally confident in my power. But yesterday's match, it completely shattered my pride. I still have no clue how you used a lightning aura, let alone how you use it even better than I do. Zeke sighed. So now this is my fault, he muttered, half joking. But Leah was dead serious and continued. I want to get strong enough to beat our older brothers and you too, Zeke. Please teach me. Zeke was quiet for a moment, deep in thought. Since Zeke didn't answer right away, Leah asked if he was really cool with it since he was also a candidate to become the next head of the Elragon family. Rangus totally agreed with her. It dawned on him that even though Zeke was an illegitimate child, Balsa Elragon was still his dad, which technically made Zeke one of the successors, like it or not. Zeke calmly replied that he didn't mind, but the real question was if Leah's body was in any condition to train, saying that from what he saw in their match, her injuries would normally take at least a month to heal. Leah shook her head and said she'd already used a healing potion, so he didn't need to worry. Zeke and Rangus exchanged a look, whispering to each other. Zeke asked if that potion was really that OP, but Rangus replied that if Zeke meant the basic potion from the entrance exam, there was no way it was strong enough to heal Leah's wounds that fast. Because she's the daughter of the family head, she must have used some high-grade stuff. Zeke sighed, amazed, muttering that this era was on a whole other level. Leah nodded, admitting that without the potion she would have been stuck in bed for at least a month. But now, what really matters is my request, will you agree to train me too? She knew he also had to train, but she wanted to level up under his guidance. Zeke agreed without a second thought, saying that he never turned down young people with ambition. Both Leah and Rangus were shocked by his answer. Leah pointed out that he was young just like them, while Rangus added that they were all pretty much the same age. Zeke chuckled and agreed. Then with a teasing tone, Zeke asked if she was 100% sure about having him as her teacher. After all, he was the one who defeated her. Leah replied firmly that she didn't care about that. She couldn't afford to be picky if she wanted to become the next head of the Elragon family. She had to get stronger no matter what it took. Zeke remembered how when they first met, she had mentioned her dream of becoming the family head. He asked why she was so obsessed with that goal. Without even hesitating, Leah answered that if she failed to become family head, she'd just be used for a political marriage. She said bitterly that in the best-case scenario, she'd probably be forced to marry one of her cousins. But the worst case would be marrying some guy she didn't even know. Zeke's expression went dark, anger flickering in his eyes as he asked what she meant by that. Leah said it was just how it was, considering how valuable the Elragon bloodline was, especially within the 4 branches of the family. Their source power was something special. It can be used in a million different ways. That's why the family is obsessed with keeping their bloodline pure. Rangus shuddered, feeling this terrifying vibe that suddenly came off Zeke. his voice. His whole vibe went ice cold as he said the Elragon family was seriously doing messed up stuff like this. He balled up his fist saying he was gonna wreck these nasty pointless traditions. But before things could get super heavy, a bunch of instructors rolled up and everyone's heads whipped around. Laika blinked totally confused like, oh, why are they here? While Zeke muttered that this was literally the worst timing. He was stressing that they might have heard what he just said. Then from behind them, a chick with fiery red hair showed up, and one instructor stepped forward and announced that starting today they were getting a new teacher. He said even though she was crazy busy, she made time to teach them personally, so they better be grateful. As the red-haired woman walked closer, she held out her hand to Laika and asked, "You're Lady Leah, right?" Feeling a major wave of bad vibes, Leah instinctively jumped back. Zeke stepped in front of her to protect her while Rangus grabbed his arm, totally freaked out. The redhead just smirked, saying Laika's reflexes were sharp and her aura wasn't half bad. Zeke just frowned a little. He hadn't even felt her coming until she was right there. Rangus nervously asked who she was. The instructor then introduced her as Lady Freya Fuick of the Black Dragon Corps. For real. Freya gave this polite little smile and said hi to everyone, saying it was awesome to meet them. Then she looked right at Zeke and asked, "You must be Lord Zeke." When he nodded, she was like, "Not surprised, I just popped up." Zeke just calmly replied that nothing she did was all that surprising. Freya froze for a second as Zeke's eyes started to glow, and he commented that her whole stealth thing was pretty interesting. Freya instantly got why even the head honcho Balragan was into this kid. Meanwhile, Zeke was totally analyzing her moves. He saw her source power was all packed into her lower body, flowing in a pattern he'd never seen. He realized that must be why she walks without making a sound. A spark of excitement flashed in his eyes as he wondered, what kind of martial art is that? Freya then took charge of the class. She confirmed she was their new instructor. The students started whispering to each other, not believing it. Lady Freya, the Tempest Wind, was famous for being one of the strongest fighters in the entire family. The other instructor confirmed that Freya was a 6-star practitioner with the Black Dragon Corps, the super elite squad that serves directly under the family head himself. The students were completely starstruck, trying to figure out why someone so high up would come teach at their academy. Freya just smiled and said she would totally train them, but on one condition. They had to pass a simple test. The students all gasped. She told them not to sweat it, that the test was easy. They just had to grab a crystal like the one she was holding and survive for 1 whole month inside Poison Dragon Mountain. Rangus went ghost white hearing that name, while Zeke kind of felt a flash of nostalgia. He explained that the Poison Dragon Mountain is crawling with tons of poisonous creatures. Like even brushing against one leaf could take out a normal person instantly. It was a straight-up danger zone. Zeke remembered how in his past life he basically used that place as his personal training spot. Still, he thought this test was maybe a little too brutal for a bunch of kids. Freya then laid out the rules. Each student would get 1 crystal orb. If your orb breaks or you lose it, you're immediately disqualified. When some kid nervously asked what happens to the disqualified people, Freya said it bluntly. "You get expelled from the dragon's nest." She added that they shouldn't worry about the poison itself. If they used the dragon's breath breathing technique correctly, they'd be fine. As long as they held onto their orbs and kept their breathing in check, they could make it. Leah then pointed out that besides poison plants, there were monsters there too. Freya's eyes got super sharp as she said they'd have to beat those monsters themselves, because that was the only way they were getting any food. No hunting, no surviving for more than a few days. The students looked absolutely horrified. Retin muttered that it was impossible. A lot of them were doubting if their basic strike dragon technique could even put a dent in the creatures there. Freya just smirked and told them not to panic. They had 5 days to get ready. During that time, they could each pick a basic weapon style from the Elragon family archives to learn. If they could master it, their chances of survival would get a lot better. But if they couldn't learn it in 5 days, she wasn't taking any responsibility for what went down on the mountain. One student timidly asked if Freya would help them out if things got too dangerous. Freya let out a dark laugh, saying, "You're in the dragon's nest, the Elragon family's turf. Around here, the weak don't make it. Only the strong survive. If you can't take down a few monsters on your own, then you might as well go take a long nap with them in a bed of poison." The students were trembling with fear, sweat just dripping off them. Rangus looked like he was about to start bawling, while Laika was just quiet and deep in thought. Zeke frowned to himself, wondering if this was even the same Elragon family he used to know. It felt so different from when he was the one running the show. Freya then said that was all for now. She started passing out martial arts books for every weapon type and told them to come up and grab whichever one they wanted to learn. As the students crowded around, Rangus just stood there totally unsure of what to pick. Zeke told him to just grab a spear technique, reminding him he used a spear in the entrance exam. Rangus was totally on board and gave him a thanks. Laika said she was going to pick a great sword technique since she already knew the lightning greatsword basics, but Zeke stopped her, saying she should try axe arts instead. Laika was like, why? And Zeke explained it would help cover her current weak spots. Since it was Zeke's idea, she didn't even argue, and just gave a quiet nod, totally trusting his word. Freya then asked if everyone had picked their books. When they all said yeah, she told them to make the most of the next 5 days. Their survival literally depended on mastering those moves. If they messed up, they'd die a super lame death in Poison Dragon Mountain. Just as she was about to bounce, Freya suddenly remembered something and turned back around. She warned them that during the test, the upperclassmen would be trying to snatch their crystal orbs. Rangus was completely stunned and asked what she was talking about. Freya explained that their 10-year senior group would be taking the same test, but their job was to hunt down and steal the orbs from the younger kids. She added that the younger students had them outnumbered, and since Poison Dragon Mountain was massive, they might get lucky and dodge a fight. Still, their seniors would pull out all the stops to find them and attack. After dropping that bomb, Freya turned and bounced. Rangus looked totally freaked out with sweat dripping down his face as he asked what the heck they were supposed to do now. It wasn't just poisonous monsters, but also upperclassmen hunting them down. Leica frowned and said that every single upperclassman was at least 1-star level or higher. If they ganged up on her, she'd be toast, and most of their classmates probably wouldn't make it either. Zeke nodded, saying she had a point. If Leica couldn't roll solo, then she should team up with 2 or 3 people. Teaming up wasn't against the rules after all. They could help each other hunt monsters and watch each other's backs against the seniors. When Rangus asked Zeke what his game plan was, Zeke just said he was planning to go solo and actually enjoy the exam. Leica sighed and admitted that somehow that sounded exactly like him. Before they started to train, Zeke suggested they grab a bite to eat first. As they walked off, Leica glanced at Rangus and asked if he didn't think Zeke was a little weird sometimes. Rangus just shrugged and replied, "Yeah, sometimes." 5 days later, the students were all gathered in front of Poison Dragon Mountain feeling a mix of totally scared and super determined. Freya stood in front of them, a confident smirk on her face, and declared the weather was perfect for the test to get started. Rangus said nervously that the exam was finally about to go down. Even though this was Zeke's idea, he couldn't help but wonder if it was really okay for someone like him to be on Lady Leica's squad. I mean, there were tons of noble-born students she could have picked over him, just a commoner who hadn't even hit 1 star yet. "We're in the same boat, Rangus," another student said. When Rangus turned around, he saw it was Raymond and Celine. Celine, who was from the East Hall of Dragon's Nest, admitted she was a commoner too, and couldn't believe she'd been picked to join Lady Leica for the big trial at Poison Dragon Mountain. Raymond, also from the East Hall, smiled as he looked over at Lady Leica. But Leica jumped in and said it didn't matter at all if her teammates were nobles or commoners. She had picked them because she saw their potential and skills. Hearing this, Rangus went quiet for a sec, then gripped his spear tight and announced that he got it and would do his absolute best not to be dead weight for their group. Raymond followed up saying he'd give it everything he had to meet Leica's expectations. Leica smiled big and said, "I'm counting on you all." Then she turned to Zeke and asked if he was for real about taking the trial all by himself. Zeke nodded confidently, saying he couldn't wait for it to start. Celine, still a nervous wreck, admitted she really admired both Zeke and Leica. While she was literally shaking with anxiety, Zeke was brave enough to face Poison Dragon Mountain on his own. Raymond pointed out that it was natural for them to be so chill since the blood of family heads ran in their veins. But Leica immediately shut that down, telling him not to compare her to Zeke, because even she was feeling nervous. "You're nervous?" Zeke asked. "Is there even a reason to be nervous? Besides, everyone here seems like a solid crew of students." But they all answered back that there were plenty of reasons to be freaking out about the upcoming trial. Leica then asked Zeke if he actually thought the students she picked were skilled. Zeke confirmed it right away, and thought to himself that Leica had seriously gathered some of the most promising kids in the whole academy. He realized that her eye for talent was actually pretty incredible. He hyped up their group's offense and defense, saying the trial would for sure be a piece of cake for them. "Yeah, right," Rangus replied, a drop of sweat rolling down his cheek. "You've always been way too confident, Zeke." Freya then asked if all the participants had shown up and quickly noticed that a lot of the students had already teamed up. Since some of them weren't exactly pros with their weapons yet, forming teams wasn't a bad call. Freya then stepped forward and announced the trial would be starting any minute. She explained one more time that their job was to survive for 1 whole month in Poison Dragon Mountain and protect their crystal orbs. They would only pass if their orbs were still in one piece. Every single orb was identical, meaning if someone lost theirs, it could be snatched up by someone else. A bunch of students got super anxious hearing this, while Zeke just realized that this meant swiping orbs from other people was totally fair game. Freya kept going, explaining that once the newbies found their footing on the mountain, the upperclassmen were going to swoop in to snatch their crystal orbs. The upperclassmen were totally dissing them, saying since most of the freshmen hadn't even hit 1-star rank, jacking their orbs would be a total cakewalk. Hearing that sent a major wave of mixed signals through Zeke's classmates. "We're talking fear hype and just feeling totally sketched out." Freya wrapped it up, and the second she yelled that the trial was on, everyone bolted for Poison Dragon Mountain. Watching them take off, Zeke heard Leica tell him, "Hey, don't get yourself axed out there." He just grinned and was like, "You know it," adding that they better make it out alive too. Leica then rallied her crew, and just as Zeke was telling them to watch their backs, Freya's eyes landed on him. "You're up, Zeke," she said. "Right." Zeke shot back, kind of sheepishly admitting he got lost in the moment. "Lost in the moment," Freya shot back. "You're not even a little nervous." "Nah," Zeke said with this super chill smile, then just strolled toward the mountain. Freya watched him go, thinking to herself that he was seriously one strange kid. Later that night at the camp just outside Poison Dragon Mountain, one of the instructors went up to Freya, asking if she thought the newbies were going to be okay. When she was like, "What do you mean?" he said the trial felt way too soon for a bunch of first-timers. Another instructor totally backed him up, pointing out that most of them had only been at Dragon's Nest for a couple of months. Barely any had even hit 1 star and they had 0 real-world fighting skills. He was seriously wondering how many were actually going to make it out. Freya just told them to chill, saying there was nothing to freak out about. Yeah, the mountain was crawling with venomous critters, but most were just 1 or 2 star beasts, not nearly strong enough to be a real threat. With a super bright smile, she insisted the students would be totally fine. But then under her breath, she muttered something about how she was going to unleash that thing, eventually. When one of the instructors was like, "What was that?" Freya just gave him a sly grin and said, "Oh, nothing." Then she shouted that it was time for the upperclassmen to get in on the action. The older students instantly took off for the mountain, their eyes glinting and weapons at the ready. Watching them go, Freya whispered to herself, "Wonder how many of them will make it back. I seriously can't wait to see how this plays out." Meanwhile, deep inside Poison Dragon Mountain, as the upperclassmen started their hunt, one of them spotted their first mark. And who was it? Of course it was Zeke, just standing there at the base of the mountain, not moving a muscle. "Didn't the freshman head in like ages ago?" one of them sneered. "Is this dude clueless or something?" Another one lifted his crossbow, aiming to take him out, but before the arrow even got close, Zeke just snatched it out of the air like it was nothing. The upperclassman's jaw dropped, and then Zeke snapped the arrow in two, saying, "Took you guys long enough?" One of them was like, "What's that supposed to mean?" But another one yelled that it didn't even matter. "Did you not just see him catch that arrow?" Not wasting a single second, Zeke shot forward, his eyes lit up with a crazy kind of excitement. "All right then," he said with a smirk. "Time to have some fun. If you're dying to know what happens next, you know what to do. Smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next insane chapter of this saga.